Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Maggie Jacqua. I am the content director for Whole Foods Magazine. Welcome to today's webinar, The Longevity of Citrus Flavonoids, 200 Years of Improving the Human and Pet Health Span from Vitamin P to GLP-1. Today we're going to explore a scientific and commercial journey that begins 2 centuries ago and continues today at the forefront of metabolic health, healthy aging, and GLP-1 related science. Citrus flavonoids are an example of an ingredient category with both deep historical relevance and modern scientific momentum. We're going to look at how heritage, rigorous research, and proprietary ingredient development can translate into differentiation and commercial success in an increasingly crowded wellness marketplace. I'm pleased to be joined today by two industry leaders who are uniquely positioned to tell this story. We have Rob Brewster. He is the president and owner of Ingredients by Nature, which is the world's leading manufacturer of citrus bioflavonoids and science-backed citrus extract. Rob represents the third generation of the Brewster's family legacy, which began in 1932 and has spanned decades, combining citrus science, biology, marketing, and R&D investment to deliver clinically relevant proprietary ingredients for both human and pet nutrition. Also joining us is Doug Lynch. He is an award-winning global executive with more than 30 years of experience commercializing functional foods, supplements, medicinal foods, cosmetics, animal nutrition, and more. And through his firm, Market Well Nutrition, Doug advises companies on go-to-market strategies, portfolio development, and trend-driven growth. So together, Doug and Rob will help us understand not only why citrus flavonoids matter more than ever, but also how brands can leverage them for meaningful health outcomes and lasting market success. We would love for you to join the conversation as well. We have time set aside at the end of the presentation so you can get your questions answered. Please post those into the Q&A box. And also you can use the chat feature for any comments, feedback, or if you need any technical assistance, we'll be here on the back end to help you. Before we dive in, an important disclaimer about our scientific and technical presentation. It may discuss specific health outcomes. As always, this information is presented for educational and scientific purposes only for our business-to-business audience. It is not intended as medical or nutritional advice for the treatment or prevention of disease. For medical advice, one should always consult their personal healthcare practitioner. And that said, Rob and Doug, I'll turn the stage over to you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank Heather and Maggie and the whole Whole Foods Magazine team. I'm Rob Brewster, third generation ingredient manufacturer to the industry. So happy to be able to give my family's story. It is very rich and something that I value tremendously. The company started in 1932 as Test Laboratories, Inc. It was actually started by my grandfather and a gentleman by the name of Dr. William Test. And they were way before their times doing alfalfa, tomato, and citrus science. That was really the main focus in the early years. In the 1950s, my grandfather Marshall took over the business fully, changed the name to DBA Brewster Nutrition, and he was actually selling finished supplements. So he was selling high quality vitamin and mineral supplements. He's likely probably the first MLM in the United States, and he had over 50 distributors nationwide. Once again, he was teaching the ABCs of nutrition before supplementation was even a thing. Citrus flavonoid science was definitely his passion over alfalfa and tomato science. Doug, next slide, please. And he continued to do the research that was needed. He got sick, unfortunately, in the early 70s. My father, who was a biochemist at the time, decided to take over the reins. My father, I feel, is a pioneer in this industry, and so it's truly a pleasure to be able to discuss this history. He was one of the first to freeze-dry probiotics. It was a passion of his. We had a freeze dryer in our facility for many years, and it was something that we like to call his baby, that he loved to tinker with and do different things. He turned the company back into a raw ingredient manufacturer. He was not looking at supplements anymore. He really wanted to dive back into extraction and with, once again, a focus on citrus. Brewster Foods and Stauber, I want to mention Stauber because they were very important to us at our beginning. Jerry Stauber and my father really started one of the industry's first raw material supplier relationships. My father continued to grow the raw material offerings in addition to citrus, heavily in probiotics, alfalfa extracts, saponins, and so on. I actually had a marketing and a finance background, and my father called on me to join the business in the early 2000s. And my first job was to take all of the ingredients that he had built over the years and take these human grade ingredients and go after the humanizing pet food industry. So that was a main focus for me early on in my career. Doug? We continued to grow. In 2008, we backward integrated with one of our suppliers, a company by the name of Syntec Corp, who really had the extraction expertise and really expanded our citrus portfolio. Together with Brewster, we created Ingredients by Nature, and we really had a vision for this company to be a sales, marketing, and science arm for the two companies behind the scenes. Currently, IBN invests heavily on citrus science and really at that time jump-started the citrus trials for animal and human clinical trials. Fast forward to present. You can go back one, Doug, real quick. We are still heavily focused on citrus science, but we do have 300 ingredient types that we offer to the industry. I would say our market is about 70% human to 30% animal. And we also offer a turnkey powder processing service line as well. Just some fun things that I wanted to put in here. That's my grandfather on the left. You can see the picture on the bottom, which was one of his ads for the MLM he was doing. But really, it was showing how supplementation to the human diet was very important. And once again, way before his time. He had, as I mentioned earlier, around 50 distributors nationwide. And he started a newsletter, which I thought was pretty cool, called the Brewster Newster. And he would talk about, current trends and topics to help support the distributors in their sales of his supplements. The middle booklet there is one of his formula books that I had found, and pretty interesting. You can see that he was doing bioflavonoids, finished products all the way back in the 70s. And one of the key excerpts from the beginning page that I thought was pretty cool. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but in today's world, undernutrition is a universal problem. So he really was a visionary. And I know he'd be proud on the legacy of where we are today. So a little bit more about today. As I mentioned, we offer full service powder processing, from blending, mixing, milling, sieving. We do natural sterilization. We hit both human and animal nutrition markets, and on the animal side, that includes companion animals all the way down to feed and ag. So we have 2 manufacturing plants in California, 300 SKUs, as I mentioned, and Ingredients by Nature is the sales and marketing arm for our family company. So that's a little bit about the history. I could go on and on, as I have many stories, but I'm going to turn it over to Doug now so he can really dive into citrus science and the history of citrus bioflavonoids.
Thanks very much, Rob, and thanks very much to the great people at Whole Foods Magazine for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Doug Lynch, and I serve as the commercial lead for the family and the Ingredients by Nature company. Going to take you a bit on a journey, though, and it's going to wind the clock way, way, way back. And the story of the citrus bioflavonoids really started with vitamin C. And I'm playing a little bit with that terminology, as you know. So I know people like to cruise. I'm not one of them, but these types of cruises back in the 1700s, I certainly would not have wanted to be on, because scurvy was really devastating sailors that were on long voyages. And in fact, since the Columbus era, over 2 million had died as a result of scurvy. And the symptoms are pretty horrible. First of all, fatigue and irritability, as you can imagine, would be terrible on a small boat. But then they couldn't do the work. They couldn't hoist the sails. Their joints were swollen. They had bleeding gums, so even they couldn't even eat food. and red blue spots would appear on the skin, and the skin itself would bruise extremely easily. And this was termed at the time permeable capillaries. And so in 1747, James Lind, who was a naval surgeon, actually did a clinical trial where he took his sailors, he isolated them, and he tried to give some of them some homebrewed cures, including one poor group that had to eat nothing really but vinegar, and the other group he actually gave citrus products. And ultimately, lime juice rations were mandated for sailors as a result of that because James found that he could actually cure scurvy at that point. And that's why there's sometimes British sailors were referred to as limeys. And this really transformed maritime health overall. There were all sorts of requirements to make sure that the sailors would become healthier. And while the scurvy is not a direct discussion about citrus bioflavonoids, it sparked a ton of research that would commence at that time, so that ultimately they would track down what these bioflavonoids were. And one little more note for the Brewster family, their original symbol in Brewster Foods was the Mayflower because their family went back to the Mayflower. And so I think it's kind of interesting that all things start with vitamin C. Now, citrus itself, how it was working, it's really a powerhouse. There are ultimately multiple bioactive ingredients that are coming from all parts of the citrus, and to the degree that we're going to talk about the flavonoids, that's usually coming from the flavido or the flavado, which is the outside skin of the orange or of the lemon or the tangerine. And then there's the albedo, which is kind of the white line. So if you cut the citrus open, you'll actually see that white line that precedes. So those two areas are kind of where the citrus bioflavonoids tend to be. But that's not the only thing. Obviously, you've got the pulp, which is the source of phenolic acids, and the seeds have essential oils, and the juice itself has some value, of course, with the vitamins too. And really, when we start to talk about the citrus bioflavonoids, there's some question in terms of what are they actually doing in the actual fruit and the plant that yields them. And really, the thought was that as these plants actually emerged from aqueous, from water-based algae and the like, they needed to protect themselves from various things, including drought, the ultraviolet protection from the sun. So they had to actually be much more hardy and also the be able to interact with the soil with all the bacteria that's there. And so the theory is that it's actually working on each of those areas, and the benefits that we're seeing right off the bat were benefits from antioxidants to anti-inflammatory, cardiovascular, which is going to play a lot into our discussion today, and then also pollinators. So it actually attracted the pollination to create an eternal cycle where the plants can grow. So we're going to skip a little bit forward in time and I'm not even going to butcher this name because I do not speak French, but Monsieur Lebreton, he was a French chemist and likely a pharmacist. He is basically, if you look around, you'll see that he is associated with bioflavonoids, right? And hesperidin specifically. So he isolated hesperidin from citrus from the albedo or the peel, and that's about all he said. And unfortunately, yeah, we've got hesperidin, but there was no real physiological role in what it did. No reference whatsoever to any of the groupings, like, what are these compounds? But we do have to give credit to him because he was the first to talk about what would be hesperidin. So we did include a photo to honor him here. And no, there is no photo that actually exists of Monsieur Lebreton. So unfortunately, we don't know really when he was born. We don't know when he died. We only know he was referred to in this book, and as such, he's really not credited with discovering flavonoids at all. So unfortunately, Monsieur Lebreton, your story and our story is done. Now, this gentleman, on the other hand, in 1926, Albert, and I am not going to attempt to pronounce his last name, he actually did quite a bit of research starting in 26 and went on for almost a decade. And I'm going to just play a little bit of a trivia game here. What did these studies lead to the discovery of? And number one would be vitamin C. Two would be the first citrus flavonoid. Three, both of the above. And four, the mimosa cocktail. The answer is both of the above. Indeed, he was the first person to discover vitamin C and name it associated ultimately. It would become ascorbic acid. It was hexuronic acid in his initial work. This led to the Nobel Prize in 1937. And by 1939, he found that there was a synergy of a bioactive that was actually outperforming against scurvy than vitamin C alone. And as such, he named it vitamin P for the permeability that we mentioned earlier about capillaries. And so Albert actually was the first person to say that there was a series of compounds that were accomplishing this. And as such, we give him credit for discovering the citrus bioflavonoids. So we continue that story with vitamin P now. Why don't we call it vitamin P? If he named it that, if for the capillaries, why don't we refer to it as such? Well, vitamin P was never an actual single chemical. He in his research, he was finding a number of things that were in a group that closely related phytochemicals in buckwheat and citrus. So he was able to locate them in both of those, and they had a very common molecular background. Um, Most of the work that vitamin P was associated would later be called rutin, and they would find hesperidin, and they kept finding more and more compounds that were very close and derived, but there was also no specific disease linked to the absence. So even if these were deprived, there was no specific disease saying that this vitamin is essential for life. That being said, you can still see vitamin P. There's some clever marketing brands that still refer to it, and there's some historic usage. But as of now, vitamin P has gone away. We certainly want to talk about flavonoids now, which is how we refer to the class. And if you look on the chart to the left, these are what we consider flavonoids, or sometimes you hear them called bioflavonoids. They're pretty much interchangeable. And you can see from the structure below, they all look very, very similar in nature. And some of the big ones are hesperidin, naringin, and naringenin. So you have the precursors to this, and let's not forget eriocitrin, which is going to play a part in our discussion too. And so I've given a little bit of a chart that you can download this after, and you can take screenshots if you want to. We're happy to talk to you about these because these are all commercialized by the Brewster family. You can get these from us as pure and isolated, or you can get them in various combinations, which is one reason why there are a number of different SKUs at Ingredients by Nature. So ultimately, vitamin P, we no longer talk about it as vitamin P, it's flavonoids. So that's a journey in the past, but it's certainly not just a yesterday story. To be sure, the research that is ongoing now is accelerating into how important citrus bioflavonoids are. New health benefits are being recognized every day, and it's really about time ultimately that we're giving citrus bioflavonoids their due. And when I say it's about time, I don't mean it's because it's well deserved. I mean it's because it's about your time and it's about the time of your pets. Because ultimately, we are seeing citrus bioflavonoids as a substantial marker towards longevity. And there are some milestones in longevity research that go back to pretty close to when some of these research were already being done by Albert. But I wanted to point out a few of them that in 39 there was a calorie restriction, and that was shown that it actually increased the lifespan of mice and rats. And we'll talk about our friends, the rodents, in a bit as well. The free radical theory of aging came about in 1956. In 1973, the oxidative stress and aging theory came along. And in 2003, we were talking about sirtuins, of course, like resveratrol, which had some pretty monumental stories then. And then we got into the NAD, premature aging discussions as well. Senolytic therapy, so basically destroying the zombie cells that take up space in your body, but we really don't know what they do other than really spew SASP, which is pro-inflammatory series of events that actually has really negative effects overall. And the thing I wanted to point out to you is that we now have the ability to screen with this is C. elegans, which is a kind of a microscopic invertebrate. And the other thing that is clear is that really mice and rats to a degree are kind of the gold standard. You might find that surprising in our industry, but these are animals that can live 3 years, and you want to be able to show that if you give something to them that they're actually keeping their health and able to extend their lifespan. And to that degree, the C. elegans is great because they only live about 15 days. The rodents live about 3 years, and absolutely, we've mapped a lot of their genes into the humans so we can see how they are and are not expressed. The one thing I wanted to show you about the circles on the left-hand graph here, the left-hand table, these are all diet related and supplement related. So some of the other things you're going to see in that list really are more medicinal in nature, but I wanted to absolutely point out that from the beginning, vitamin and supplementation has been critical for longevity. And of course, there's now considered 12 hallmarks of aging. Used to be 9. They increased them a bit. And I wanted to show you where citrus bioflavonoids are playing a role. Now, these are very interconnected areas. And so it's not where one starts and it has no impact on the others. But the amount of research starting to pile up on how bioflavonoids are acting are definitely in these zones here, which is intercellular communication. So these are molecular signaling, which is incredibly important. Also, inflammaging or age-related inflammation and gut dysbiosis are most definitely being impacted positively by bioflavonoids, and some of the research that the Brewster family has been doing for over a decade. That's not all, though. Cellular senescence, we mentioned about the zombie cells. We can see a lot of the inflammation is one of the causes of that senescence. So if you can get to the root inflammation, you're having an impact to prevent that problem. Mitochondrial dysfunction is absolutely metabolic. Your ability to metabolic systems are becoming more and more important, and bioflavonoids are linked. And then nutrient sensing, so the impacts of GLP-1 and the impacts of glucagon and also insulin, and how these are all interconnected. So the bioflavonoids are really starting to play a significant role. We're understanding them in these core areas of the hallmarks of aging. And some examples to that right here in 2 publications. We had the effects of lifelong intake of lemon polyphenols on aging and intestinal microbiome, and the senescence accelerated mouse prone 1. So senescence was indicated in that, and our lovely polyphenols were involved. And then lemon flavonoid extract arumin that is marketed by the Ingredients by Nature improved the pro-antioxidant status and interfered with cholesterol metabolism without affecting serum cholesterol levels in the aged rat. So again, the rodents come into play because you can study them for years and see how they impact. Plus, you can start your research on older mice and older rats in order to see how intervention takes place. And I want to thank the people at the Industry Transparency Center who provided a couple of these slides. And we're really, when we talk about healthy aging, we've evolved in even our terminology. And you know, back in the early 1990s, we were all talking about anti-aging, fight aging, aging some horrible thing that we have to do. And then they flipped it and said, no, 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 it's not about anti-aging. It's about let's age healthier, right? And then we realized, you know what? If you're aging healthier, but it's not having an impact on your day-to-day life, clearly we want to be talking about active aging, that we're still active up until our senior years. And now, of course, we're talking more discussions on longevity, which is how long somebody is supposed to live, and health span in terms of how healthy they are during that period of time. And so, as I mentioned before, these are all interconnected hallmarks. And so, in the Industry Transparency Center, the way they look at it is an umbrella, so that athletic performance, active lifestyles, and conditions themselves all kind of are playing a role, either pro or against a healthier lifespan. And understanding these conditions, such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, healthy bones and joints, and blood sugar management are absolutely key, and consumers are understanding that. And yeah, so to be sure, this we got this information, of course, from the NBJ, and the question was, when you are a consumer seeking out longevity, what are the indications that you are concerned about? And cardiovascular support is number 2 on that list, just behind immune system. And healthy weight is number 4 on that list. But also high are blood sugar, inflammation, and cholesterol. So all these things are starting to work together. And it is very clear that health-minded consumers are associating that the health span gets improved when you improve cardiovascular and metabolic health. Okay, and what is cardiometabolic health? Well, that's when you combine the well-being of your cardiovascular system with the metabolic system. And I want to appreciate the people with Thrive Advisory Group with Dr. Jacqueline Jacques, who presented some of this information as to us and to all. It's a key indicator of overall health and a crucial factor in preventing the common conditions of aging. You'll look that there's, of course, HDL cholesterol and LDL cholesterol. It's the balance that's becoming even more and more important, that you have good numbers there. But and to be sure, there's a borderline area and there's high. But triglycerides also play a role. So you're really looking at the heart health aspects of this. And that really translates downstream to blood pressure, maintaining it at normal ranges, maintaining a blood sugar level that's healthy, also managing cholesterol and triglycerides. But then you get into, okay, if you're doing all those things, you're more active and you're having a much better control of blood sugar. How is that impacting the other side, which is your healthy waist circumference? So the healthy BMI. And to be sure, you want to make sure that when you're considering what is cardiometabolic health, that you're not dealing with an existing cardiovascular disease like a prior heart attack or stroke. And so in this zone, enter in the flavonoids that we mentioned before. And I talked about the albedo and primarily found in the peels and the citrus fruits themselves. And with a dose of 150 milligrams 2 times a day, showed significant benefit at 4 weeks and actually 12 weeks. And this product is called Citronol. And we have a pretty defined mechanism of action, which is the modulation of lipid synthesis in the liver. And that certainly helps to maintain the healthy triglyceride levels. It promotes a fatty acid oxidation, which is a more breakdown and the elimination of the triglycerides and the LDL cholesterol. It supports a balanced production of lipoproteins, including VLDL. And this helps maintain a very healthy non-HDL cholesterol. Can't forget the antioxidant supports, which go way back even to the scurvy days. These have been shown to help protect blood lipids from oxidative stress and supports a healthy inflammatory response. Of course, inflammation run amok is a problem, but it serves a normal purpose in our lives as well. All of this is really geared towards overall benefit and heart health. And citronol is a fantastic product that we can offer from our company. Now, I mentioned to you before that there's a number of other components that are part and parcel beyond in the citrus fruits beyond the flavonoids. This is an alkaloid, which is from bitter orange, and it's isolated as p-synephrine. Um, this is a very mild targeted thermogenic. It has a very strong safety profile. And ultimately, it's been shown to increase it consistently. It increases fat oxidation, which the evidence shows consistently increases fat use during exercise. So you're burning the fat, and it's getting better at that at that metabolism, and the increase of thermogenesis is there as well. It's great to talk about boosting metabolic rates, and it's great to talk about appetite suppression and all these things. But if you don't really increase the metabolic rate, you're going to continue to have problems when it comes to BMI. So this is a very well understood action, and it has been shown extremely safe between 20 and 50 milligrams per day for metabolic support. Want to talk a little bit about Arumin. We're switching from the bitter oranges and the orange discussion now, and we're going now into the lemon. Arumin has 3 patents, including one by name for boosting GLP-1 levels. But to be sure, controlling blood glucose is one of the outcomes. So anyone can boost GLP-1 when you feed them the same diet and you measure right after they've eaten. In these 3 studies that were done by our company, we actually did not change the diet whatsoever of the participants. We know that we had a low dose of 200 milligrams per day, and I'll show you the study that zeroed in on that. And it's a blend of a series of bioflavonoids, but areocitrin being the largest percentage. It produces and promotes increased insulin, and the mechanisms proposed. It inhibits DPP4, and that boosts the GLP-1 because that ultimately is something that goes adverse to GLP-1 production, and it actually is increasing when you increase when you decrease glucagon, you're increasing GLP-1. So that's those are tied to those pathways. It improves insulin secretion and glucose uptake. And also, more and more of our studies are going into the effect on the gut microbiome, back to that permeability, but no longer were we talking capillary permeability. We're talking about gut permeability and how we are inhibiting that, and in effect modulating age-related inflammation. So we all hear about GLP-1, but you might not know that GLP-1 really means longevity and not just obesity. And I mentioned those hallmarks of aging. You can see on the left-hand side, each of them are listed there, and how GLP-1 actually plays a significant role and mechanism in each of those hallmarks of aging themselves. I won't read all of them, but to your heart's content, feel free to do that. I definitely wanted to show that it has an impact on senescence, which is that SAF secretion that I mentioned before that causes such a breakdown of your systems. And the citations are listed here. If you want these studies, please let us know. And ultimately, this isn't just a situation between a human, it also has an impact on pets. And we're going to talk about that as we go along. But let's start with the human. And in the first human trial, it was a dose response, and we actually decreased what I will call in a shorthand the bad actors. We decreased it, we decreased glucose levels, we decreased the insulin resistance. HbA1c went down. We decreased glucagon, which is sort of like the anti-insulin, and we decreased C-peptide. Um, TNF alpha is kind of the master switch of inflammation. It's certainly that, and NF kappa beta are really bad actors. So we decreased those, and then we actually had an increase of what I would call the good actors. GLP-1 in that study was an average of 15%. Adiponectin went up 19%, which is really fat metabolism and the like. And then antioxidant levels increased. And so we saw that we reduced inflammation, we reduced oxidative stress, and we actually reversed a pre-diabetic condition that was in 24% of the patients. And 1 in 3 adults has the terminology of prediabetes. It's not a disease state because ultimately diet and exercise can lead to its reversal. So if all of us just ate well and we exercise more, that wouldn't be a problem. Second human trial was done, and so when we zeroed in that 200 outperformed or at least performed as well as 800, we started to do it at 200 to see how it worked. This is a crossover study where we had 12 weeks of an Ariumin and placebo group. They washed out, and then we switched the treatment. Once again, the bad actors all went down in their concentration levels, and really surprisingly similar, or unsurprisingly, because it's a well-designed study, but very surprising, significant and similar results in this trial. And once again, the GLP-1, because we actually saw GLP-1 at a lower dose, went up higher. Once we took the 800 milligram per day out, in this average, we actually showed that GLP-1 went up, and adiponectin went up again, and the antioxidant effect. Third human trial was on the gut health. So we really wanted to focus in on the hallmark of aging, which was intestinal dysbiosis. And what we found, we moderately influenced the specific intestinal microorganisms and propionic acid production, which is related to glucose homeostasis, GLP-1 production in patients with prediabetes. And if you look at the trial design, again, it was a 12-week study. We had males and females that were in the study. Blood glucose again went down 6%, very similar. GLP-1 in this trial went up. We measured the inflammatory markers once again. But the other thing that we really took a look at was the active ingredients, or I'd say the microorganisms that are linked to a resistance of insulin, and we actually found ultimately that when we tested the gut microbiome and the flora, we found that we were increasing the organisms that actually supported GLP-1 and production and blood sugar, and then we reduced in concentration those that were against it. We also did a Scheim study at that point where we combined metformin and Ariumin in a Scheim study, which is a simulated microbiome. And we actually found that there was some synergy between combining the two in the Scheim, which was really an interesting moment because metformin is often used not for diabetes, but for longevity. So we started to think, you know what, maybe there's something to be said for an action with metformin and Ariumin. And lo and behold, we just had this study published, the fourth human trial. And this one, we actually did a trial with metformin by itself and metformin and Ariumin. And what we found, because they have very similar pathways for Ariumin and longevity, Ariumin and metformin for longevity, which is GLP-1 signaling, inflammation balance, reducing oxidative stress, beneficial overall microbiome effects, and some AMPK sensing, nutrient sensing. We know metformin works directly on this. Ariamin works indirectly, and the results were very, very encouraging that they work very well together. And to be sure, one of the other beneficial effects that we saw was on gut permeability and the inflammation that is caused when bad actors get into the bloodstream. They start taking out your interstitial tissue, causing a bigger break between your epithelial lining, which the bad actors will penetrate in and cause more inflammation. So we are positively moving down the direction that from a protection of the gut, the gut membranes, all of this is leading towards a better metabolic health. I mentioned that this isn't just leaky gut is a situation, and gut health is important to humans. It's also very important to pets, and they work in very different ways. Unfortunately, if you have a dog that has a leaky gut, you would know it because it is gassy. It tends to have diarrhea. And it's just a very miserable condition for dogs to be in. They see weight loss. The skin has a lot of problems. They rash. They have hot spots and chronic ear infections. They're behaviorally just not happy at all, and ultimately this leads to joint pain. Cats behave somewhat differently, but there are some commonalities, such as the diarrhea and the flatulence and the poor coat. So those are things that are cats are associated. The allergies become a real problem for them. And all of this unfortunately leads to inflammation, which impacts their overall health and worsens any existing disease state. So the team that brought you Ariamin is now becoming the same team that is launching a product for dogs and cats. Ultimately, we have dogs, canines first out of the gate. And we are actually creating a product that is designed to boost GLP-1, and ultimately we call it the G loop because all of these macro molecule signalings that take place, it's not about boosting GLP-1 for obesity. It is for making sure that your pet gets the most out of its life, more walks, more plays, more years together. And the team that's assembled here is going to be bringing this product for pet health. So just to cap this presentation off, I want to first of all thank all of you for being here. We'd be happy to send you all of the studies that we've talked about on this, because longevity and GLP-1, neither of these concepts are going anywhere. That we really have an amazing bioflavonoid group of products. We're going more into the developing gut health line of bioflavonoids. So next time at the next supply side, we'll be talking to you about that. But yeah, 60 years of researching, extracting citrus-derived ingredients, 300 ingredient that you can purchase in combination or by themselves. But it's not just about the citrus. There's the probiotics we mentioned. We're into greens for athletes. I'll leave it at that. That they satisfy the current health demands of extreme athletes and weekend warriors alike. We are a full service team. We have our R&D, we have our strong quality group, and we are a manufacturer. So with that, I want to thank you very much and open it up to question and answer.
All right, excellent. Thank you both. So to everyone out there, you can post your questions into the Q&A box, and we will get to those. We did get a question that came in earlier on the chat asking about the slides and if you'll be able to get those on demand and kind of take a deeper dive later. Yes, we will be sharing on Whole Foods Magazine. We'll have this up on demand, and we'll send an email so that you'll know when it's available. And we also encourage you, please do let any of your colleagues who weren't able to join us live because of their schedules know that they'll be able to access that as well. Take a deep dive and study some of the science again later. So Doug, question for you. So for brands, you talked about the science and just clearly a major investment in science. For brands considering an ingredient supplier, can you highlight a few of the essentials that you feel like you should really be looking for to ensure quality? And I think like ingredients by nature being a good role model to look at what they're doing to help see, what should people be considering?
Well, sure. So your scientist in an organization or brand wants to show that their product, by including that active ingredient, is going to be more effective. Of course, that's where the substantiation comes in, and the substantiation of the multiple clinical trials that have been undertaken by Ingredients by Nature. By the way, I should say I've been in the business 30 years. It's very rare that companies actually will invest in one clinical trial behind what they do. It's almost unheard of that they've done four, and they're still looking in each of those areas for the same biomarkers. It's not unusual for a company that has I have an active ingredient that works for, let's say, cardiovascular. Now let's see if that polyphenol works in the brain. But to actually keep going back and showing that you actually have boosting of the GLP-1 in every one of those trials, that you actually have blood glucose control in every one of those trials is extremely rare. So the substantiation has to be there. The efficacy has to be there. You want IP because if you're going to educate your consumer as to why they need to take this product to begin with, you want to make sure that that education, which is the most expensive part of a brand's life and times, that they can't just somebody else can put in another ingredient that doesn't have that IP and make the same claims. So IP, substantiation, efficacy, safety goes without saying, but I'll say it, the products have to be safe. We are self-affirmed GRAS on the Ariamin, and we have a robust safety profile for our active ingredients. And all of this comes down to one word, which is differentiation. The brand wants to be able to say, we're doing something better for our consumers than our competitor. We are different from them. We can have a premium price point in times at certain times, and we can actually put a product on the market that will outlast the life cycle of a typical product life cycle.
When you were talking through your presentation about the science, and you talked about the GLP-1 and how people could do a study kind of saying, oh, we got this result. And I feel like that was such a good point that you made about really going for real results and not just, I guess it's almost like fairy dusting the science of like, oh, look what we found. But really diving in.
It's an excellent point because it's not enough to just say we spiked the GLP-1. You have to show another biological benefit that's taking place. Our company is really focused on the glucose metabolism at this stage. Research continues, and I can say that I mentioned to you gut health and some of these other areas because these are very interlinked biological conditions and markers. So I think it's really important to make sure that the product is differentiated in the end, and we are bringing science. By the way, I only focused on the human studies. We have quite a bit of mechanism studies. We have quite a bit of preclinical data as well. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you ask for our dossiers.
Excellent. I wanted to dive in, Rob, if you could talk a little bit about the pet nutrition. I know this is a new frontier, and we had a talk earlier this year, and we touched on how people might even be more invested in the health span and longevity of their pets than themselves sometimes, but can you talk about what you see there in that category and some of the growth opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, we see the pet supplement space as just primed to boom. I mean, we're seeing products come out that really we feel we can create a new category in the pet supplement space, which is biosignaling health. Everything we're doing at Ingredients by Nature, everything we're doing with the flavonoids on the human side, we feel has a place for pets as well. And yeah, I mean, there's a direct correlation between the health of a pet owner and their pets. And so we know that the GLP-1 space is really booming on the human side, and we feel that we can do some good on the pet side as well. So we're very excited about what we're doing at Pet Nutra. We're going to change the game, we feel, on the pet side.
Excellent. For our formulators out there, can you share, and I guess this would be for the human side, we could do the pet side as well, any insights into formulation preferences, what you're seeing in terms of trends, what people want, and what the opportunities are there with some of the ingredients that you discussed today?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that, but Rob can also speak too. We put a lot of effort in terms of what these what how adaptable these can be in various formulations. I'll talk about Ariamin, but remember these citrus bioflavonoids are very similar type ingredients. So know that to some degree, some of it is coming from the peel. So if you can imagine your mind's eye sticking your tongue on the peel, you might kind of go, "Ooh, well." So yeah, it's a little bit bitter. But it is very soluble. And you can overcome the bitterness, particularly if in a powder beverage where you put it in and you have other types of flavorants. But play to it. Have a citric acid type profile in the flavor itself, and people expect the people expect their citrus products to bring both that bitterness and to some degree sweet flavors. But we also, because of the low dose, we're able to put these into gummies. We're able to put these in tablets and capsules. So it's very forgiving when it comes to a formulation, and that also will lead towards a differentiated brand.
Excellent. All right. Anything you wanted to add to that, Rob?
No, I think the whole concept, and we talked about it, Maggie, at supply side, longevity, health span is our focus. We want to work with brands that have that same vision for these ingredients, but really it's joygevity, right? You and I talked about that. You love the name. It's
Yeah.
really having those joyful years, the longer years as you live. So that's really what we're going to focus on from a science standpoint, and we see that as being a trend with our customers.
Excellent. So kind of on that note, we've talked about longevity for pets, for humans, and Rob, obviously your company has amazing longevity in the industry. You guys are gearing up to your 95th anniversary, which, wow, congratulations. That is so amazing. And as you're doing it, you're breaking this new ground in the longevity space. Can you give us kind of a look ahead? What can we look forward to from the company, either in terms of research or growth or anything else as you head into that 95th anniversary?
Well, one thing I want to say about that 95 years is I owe it all to my grandfather and my father. I wish my father is sick right now with dementia, so it's hard to, I'd love to celebrate this with him, but very proud to be running the company and taking it to the next level. Um, what you can see from us is more science. We are going to put our heads down and, like Doug mentioned, get more into the gut dysbiosis space, gut permeability. We already have some new products we're going to be launching. So more to come in terms of new ingredients and additional science on the ones we have in our portfolio already.
All right, we will stay tuned for that. And Doug, any final takeaways or points you want to drive home before we wrap up?
Yeah, this has been a journey, a journey in discovery that has gone back a couple hundred years, and the best is yet to come. The ability to do these screenings to actually show real impact on increasing health span and increasing lifespan. That those capabilities we wouldn't have even been able to imagine them 10 years ago. We're certainly using the best of clinical trial designs. Um, where our mechanism these days, we're able to show better mechanism of action using AI and other technologies. So the best is yet to come, and I look forward to the next century with ingredients by nature leading the way.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you both. And to everyone out there, if today's webinar sparked any additional questions that strike you or ideas you want to share, from formulation challenges to market positioning, the Ingredients by Nature team welcomes the opportunity to collaborate. As Doug said, share the research. You can reach out and get all of that information, and they'll help you unlock the full potential of these ingredients. So as I said, additional resources are available. Connect with Ingredients by Nature and continue the conversation. I just want to say thanks again to Doug and Rob and to all of you for being part of today's session. If you'd like to review the science again, as I said, or share with colleagues who couldn't join us, it will be available on demand. So stay tuned for an email that's going to come from the Whole Foods Magazine team. We'll let you know when it's available. And thank you all, and wishing you a happy holiday season.
Thank you, Whole Foods. Thank you all for joining us.